You check your phone before your alarm goes off, not because you're anxious, not because you're waiting on a message. You check it the way you've checked it every morning for the past 2.5 years, quietly, before your feet even touch the floor, before the coffee maker runs its cycle, before your brain fully remembers what day it is, and the number is there, $63.47, earned while you slept. You put the phone down. You stare at the ceiling for a moment, and then you do something that would confuse almost everyone who knows you. You get up, get dressed, and drive to your desk job, the same one you've had for 9 years, without telling a single person what just happened. That's the part nobody talks about, not the number, the silence. Because here's the thing about reaching the point where your money makes more money than your labor does, at least for a stretch of hours while the world is asleep. It doesn't feel the way the internet promised it would. There's no confetti. There's no moment where you lean back in a hammock on a beach somewhere and exhale like a person in a commercial. It's quieter than that. It's stranger than that. And the silence, the deliberate, chosen silence, turns out to be the most complicated part of all. I want to walk you through how you got there, not as a motivational story, not as a blueprint you're supposed to copy, as an honest account of what the road actually looked like, including the parts that were slow and boring and occasionally humiliating, and including the part where you realize that earning more asleep than awake doesn't automatically mean what you thought it would mean. Let's go back. You are 38 years old, and you have a coworker named Dustin. Dustin sits 4 cubicles down from you in a regional logistics company where you both process freight claims, a job that pays decently, requires moderate concentration, and produces in you a very specific kind of fatigue that isn't quite physical and isn't quite intellectual. It's administrative fatigue. The fatigue of moving information from one box to another, 8 hours a day, 50 weeks a year. Dustin is 36, he's smart, genuinely funny, and he talks about money the way some people talk about sports, constantly, enthusiastically, and with a level of detail that suggests he has thought about almost nothing else for several years running. Every Monday morning, he has a new story, a new watch, a new weekend. He drove up to the lake house his wife's parents own, the one with the boat, and you should see how beautiful it was up there in October. He got tickets to something. He put a new set of tires on the truck because you only live once, right? He's thinking about refinancing the condo because rates are going to go up, and he read somewhere that now is the time. You listen to Dustin. You genuinely like Dustin. You have lunch with Dustin at least twice a week, and here's the thing you carry home every evening and never say out loud. Dustin is spending money he doesn't quite have on things he doesn't quite need to perform a version of his life that costs more every year. You've never seen his bank statements. You don't know his numbers, but you know what a person looks like when they're running to stay in place because you spent 5 years looking like that yourself, and the posture is unmistakable. You are 38 years old. You carry $11,000 in a savings account that earns almost nothing. You have a 401k you haven't touched since your 3rd year at the company. You have a used Honda that's paid off and a studio apartment with a lease that renews every August. You are not wealthy. You are not even comfortable in the way the word comfort implies ease. But you have, for the first time in your adult life, a small margin. A small, fragile, real margin. And a woman named Sylvia, your mother's closest friend since college, a retired municipal bond analyst with a very calm voice and a habit of saying difficult things very gently, once said something to you at a family barbecue that you did not understand at the time and have thought about almost every day since. She said, "The first rule of building anything is that you cannot build with what you've already spent." You nodded politely. You helped yourself to more potato salad. You forgot about it for approximately 2 years. 39. A tenant in the apartment above yours moves out at the end of January, and your landlord raises the rent by $217 a month effective March 1st. Not a round number, not a symbolic number, $217, which happens to be almost exactly what you spend on restaurants and delivery in an average month. You make a decision that surprises you slightly. Instead of absorbing the increase by cutting something else, you move. You move to a smaller apartment in a quieter part of town, 12 minutes further from work. The rent is $64 less than what you were paying before the increase. The apartment has one window in the kitchen and a parking spot that floods every spring. You do not love it, but you are not trying to love it. You are trying to create space. The math from the move, the rent difference plus the restaurant money you've already cut, gives you roughly $281 a month that previously had no destination. You open a brokerage account on a Thursday night in March. Using a laptop you bought refurbished for $340 2 years earlier, you fund it with $1,200 from your savings account. You buy shares in a broad market index fund, not because you've done years of research, but because you've done enough research to understand that most people who try to be clever with individual stocks are competing against people who do nothing else, and you are not prepared to be that clever. You want exposure. You want time. You want to stop treating the market like a place for other people. The $1,200 sits there. It goes up a little, it goes down a little, nothing dramatic happens. You set up an automatic contribution of $190 a month. That's it. That's the beginning. No moment of inspiration, no revelation, no Dustin-style announcement at lunch. Just $1,200 and an automatic transfer and a flooded parking spot. 41. 2 years in, you have $6,850 in the brokerage account. The market was rough in the middle. There was a stretch of 4 months where the account dropped from $4,200 to $3,100, and you made a rule for yourself. You were allowed to check the balance once a week on Sunday evenings and no more. Any more frequent than that, and you would start making decisions based on noise rather than direction. The rule is harder to keep than you expected. There are mornings, specifically the mornings when the financial news is particularly dramatic, when you pick up your phone 3 or 4 times before you remember the rule. You put the phone back down, you make the coffee, you drive to work. Dustin has bought a second truck. It's black. It looks expensive. He tells you over lunch, thinking about starting a side business doing weekend hauling. He is enthusiastic about this. You tell him genuinely that you think it's a great idea. You do not tell Dustin about the brokerage account. You do not tell anyone about the brokerage account. This is not a strategy at this point. It's not a philosophy. It's more like superstition or privacy, the way some people don't tell anyone about a job application until they know they got it. You don't want to explain something that hasn't proven itself yet. You don't want to talk about a number that might disappear. Also, if you're being precise about it, you don't quite believe it yet yourself. 43. The market drops, not a gentle correction. A real, extended, stomach-tightening decline that runs from early spring into the following January and takes your account, which has reached $18,400 by this point, down to $11,730 over the course of about 9 months. You watch $6,670 of notional value evaporate. You read enough to understand the word notional. It helps, slightly. Here is what you do during those 9 months. You keep the automatic transfer running. $190, then $210 when you get a small raise every month without interruption. You buy shares at prices that feel uncomfortable and uncertain. Sylvia, whom you've started calling occasionally on Sunday afternoons, not to talk about money specifically, but because she's sharp and funny and your mother misses her, tells you something during one of those calls that you write on a piece of notepad paper and tape to the inside of your kitchen cabinet door. She says, "Everyone wants to invest. Very few people want to endure investing." You look at that sentence every morning when you get a glass of water. You do not take it down. The market recovers. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily over the following 14 months. By the time you're 44, your account is at $24,900. You are $6,500 ahead of where you were before the drop, which means the drop, in retrospect, was not a disaster. It was a discount. You let yourself feel, for about 45 minutes on a Sunday afternoon, something close to pride. And then you check to make sure the automatic transfer is still running, and you close the app, and you go for a walk. 45. You roll over your 401k from a previous employer, a warehouse management company you worked at for 3 years in your mid-30s, into a traditional IRA. It contains $14,380. You did not know it was still there. You found it during a very boring Saturday afternoon when you were going through an old email folder looking for a warranty receipt. $14,380 that you forgot existed. Sitting in a target date fund from 2019, doing its patient, unattended work. You move it into a mix of index funds, total market, international, a small allocation to bonds because you are 45 and not 45, trying to feel 25. You adjust your overall allocation. You spend a weekend doing this. You find it genuinely interesting in a way you did not expect, the way you might find a puzzle interesting. Not exciting, but engaging. Between the brokerage account and the IRA, You now have a combined $41,200 in the market. You sit with that number for a while. You think about Sylvia's first sentence, the one about building with what you've already spent, and you feel, for the first time, that you understand it in your body and not just your head. You have spent 6 years not spending a specific pool of money, and that pool has become something that is now, quietly and without ceremony, working on your behalf. You still tell no one. 47. The flooded parking spot apartment becomes impossible. There's a plumbing issue in the spring that displaces you for 11 days. You stay in a friend's spare room. You eat too much cereal. You decide finally to find something better. You move into a one-bedroom in a building that has a working elevator and a parking spot that does not require rubber boots. The rent is $280 more per month than the old place. You absorb it. You reduce the automatic transfer from $210 to $150 for 8 months while you rebuild a small cash buffer. During those 8 months, you feel a low-grade anxiety that is familiar from your 30s, but that you didn't expect to feel now. A sense of going slightly backward, of the margin narrowing again. You remind yourself that the portfolio is still growing on its own momentum, that you haven't stopped, that you've only slowed. Sylvia, over the phone, says, "There's no such thing as a straight line in this. The only people who don't feel this are the ones who aren't paying attention." You go back to $190 the following spring, then $230 the year after. When you get a performance review that comes with a $4,700 annual raise. 49. Your brokerage account crosses $60,000 for the first time on a Tuesday afternoon in September. You are at your desk when it happens. You are, at that precise moment, entering a freight claim reference number into a form that you have filled out approximately 11,000 times in your career. You check the app during your lunch break. The number is there. You eat the rest of your lunch. You go back to the freight claim. You do not tell Dustin, who is eating at the desk across from you and describing the features of a new riding lawnmower he is considering for a yard he does not yet own. Combined with the IRA, you now have $81,000 in invested assets. You have a savings account with $9,400. You have no car payment and no consumer debt. You are 49 years old and you are, by almost no external measure, remarkable. You dress the same way you've always dressed. You drive the same car. You go to the same diner for breakfast on Saturday mornings, and you order the same eggs, and you leave the same tip. Nothing about you announces what is slowly, quietly, accumulating. This is not humility. It is not a performance. It is simply that you never made the money the point of your identity, and so there is nothing to announce. 52. You cross a threshold you had always treated as theoretical. Your portfolio, now $127,400, split between taxable brokerage and the IRA, generates, on an average night, more passive return than your hourly rate during an 8-hour shift. Not every night. Markets are not linear, but on an average night, across a rolling 30-day window, the number in the morning is typically larger than the number the night before, by a margin that exceeds what you clear in 8 hours behind a desk. You earn more asleep than you do at your desk. You remember that Sylvia said it was possible. You did not believe her at the time. You believed her intellectually, the way you might believe something you read in a book that you haven't personally experienced yet. Now you have experienced it, and the experience is not what you expected. Here's what you expected. Euphoria, a feeling of arrival, the sense that some invisible ceiling had been passed through and that the air on the other side was different. Here's what you got. A Tuesday morning, coffee, the quiet apartment, the phone with the number on it, and a feeling that is less like triumph and more like recognition. Like the answer to a question you'd been holding for a long time was finally written down in front of you, and the answer was smaller and calmer and more ordinary than the question deserved. You tell no one, not because you are ashamed, not because you distrust the people around you. You tell no one because the moment you say it out loud, it will require explanation. It will require context. It will become, in the retelling, a story about success. And you do not experience it as a story about success. You experience it as a story about duration, about a parking spot that flooded and an automatic transfer and a notepad sentence taped inside a kitchen cabinet and 11,000 forgotten dollars in a 2019 target date fund and 9 months of watching a number go down while you kept sending money toward it anyway. That story is hard to tell at lunch. It doesn't have a dramatic moment. It doesn't have a Dustin-sized bow on it. So you finish your coffee. You drive to work, you enter the freight claim reference number into the form. Here's what nobody told you about this, and what you wish someone had said earlier. The silence has a cost, not a financial cost, a human one. Because the thing about accumulating quietly, about never making the money loud, about never letting it become part of how you're seen, is that it also means carrying the gap alone, the gap between what people assume about you and what is actually true. The gap between the person they see eating diner eggs on Saturday morning and the person who has, without fanfare, built something real. Your sister, when she was going through a difficult stretch last year, made a comment at Thanksgiving that you've thought about a dozen times since. She said, not unkindly, just casually, in the way people say things when they don't know what they're saying, that it must be nice to not have to worry. The way she said it suggested she thought you had never worried, that the absence of visible financial drama meant the absence of the work behind it. You wanted for a moment to show her the 11-month period at 43, when the account dropped $6,000 and you kept sending money toward it anyway. You wanted to show her Sylvia's sentence on the cabinet door. You wanted to explain that not having to worry now is the direct result of having worried, quietly and without an audience, for 14 years. You didn't. You passed the cranberry sauce. And here's the other thing nobody told you. The silence over time becomes its own kind of asset. Not because secrets are power, but because the moment you stop performing your financial life for other people, you stop making decisions based on what the performance requires. You stop buying the thing that signals the thing. You stop keeping up. You stop needing the story to sound impressive. And that stopping turns out to be worth more than any single investment decision you ever made. You wake up on a morning that looks identical to the morning at the beginning of the story. Same apartment, same coffee maker, same ceiling. The light comes through the same gap in the curtains at the same angle. You check your phone. $71.12. Earned while you slept. You put the phone down. You stare at the ceiling. And you feel something that has taken you a long time to name accurately. It is not pride, though pride is somewhere in it. It is not relief, though relief is in there too. It is something closer to continuity. The sense that the person you were at 38, moving into a flooded parking spot apartment and opening a brokerage account on a refurbished laptop, and the person you are now are the same person, connected by an unbroken thread of small, undramatic decisions. Nobody threw you a party. Nobody saw most of it. Sylvia knows, roughly. You called her last spring and told her the threshold had been crossed, and she was quiet for a moment, and then she said, I know, I was watching. You made it look very boring, which means you did it right. You get up, you make the coffee, you drive to work, not because you have to, though for now the job still makes sense, and you're not in a hurry to leave anything behind, because the drive, the desk, the freight claim reference numbers, the lunch with Dustin talking about the lawnmower, none of it is diminished by the number on your phone. It's just the morning. Your morning. The same one it always was, and something slightly, quietly different underneath. The first rule of building anything, Sylvia said, is that you cannot build with what you've already spent. You spent 14 years not spending something. And now it works while you sleep. You still haven't told anyone. And honestly, for now at least, that's exactly how you want it.